And I am very happy to report that we recently hired another individual on our leadership team, Abby Ladea, who is the Deputy HR Director who will oversee talent services, learning and development, and our talent acquisition. And so when we do our TARP presentation next month, Abby will be joining us. So I'm extremely excited to have her join us. She previously was the Deputy HR Director for the City of St. Paul. She is also a resident of Ramsey County, and we are thrilled to have her join our team. So I just wanted to say that. I want to just also talk a little bit about some considerations as we move this work ahead. As you all know, we are the 37th largest employer in the state of Minnesota, with almost, and they smile because I said that at times. Because I want us to understand that we're a major player in this landscape. The other part of it is we have almost 4,000 employees serving more than 500,000 residents in the state's most diverse county. And our workforce is our most strategic asset. The employee experience is no longer an HR issue. It spans across all sectors. It spans across everyone in this organization. One of the things that we're seeing more and more is many of the issues that used to be unique to the public sector are now within the private sector as well. And I just want to go over a little bit of those. Number one is regardless of what's happening externally, everybody is competing for top talent. There are generational shifts in the workforce. Baby boomers are no longer comprise the majority of the people in our organization, and that is consistent regardless of what sectors you're in. We have budget constraints. The social and political things that are happening in the communities are also impacting the workforce. And it doesn't matter whether it is in the public sector or the private sector. And one of the other things that's very intriguing to us is not only the advent of technology, but the advent of how AI is beginning to impact our workforce. That is something that is not new to us, but it's something we have to address. And we see that in the work that we do, even in the human resources space. And then the last thing is, as all we know, there is declining trust, which has been going on for many years in local government. But these are the kinds of things that are impacting the employee experience in our organization. And I think it's important that we take that into consideration. But I also want to talk a little bit before we go into this presentation that this is more than just about numbers. This is more than about talent, retaining talent in our organization. It's about seeking to understand the people who deliver services across Ramsey County every single day and how various types of workforce data can help us build a stronger organization. At its core, the concept of One Ramsey County recognizes that while our employees work in different departments and perform different functions, we share a common purpose, and that purpose is serving our residents. Workforce data helps us understand who we are, where we are experiencing success, where challenges exist, and how we can strengthen our ability to serve our community. It is our hope that the data that we talk about today supports our commitment, our undying and our strong commitment to operational excellence by helping us make informed decisions about attracting, developing, retaining, and supporting the workforce. In addition, it is our hope that the data that we talk about, whether it is regarding what we've done in the TARP efforts, whether it's the analytical information that we will share, we hope that it will provide insights into who we are as a county, who we are as an employer, what trends we are experiencing, and what we are doing to build a current and future-ready workforce. Ultimately, it's our hope and our goal is to build a current and future-ready workforce, one that has the talent, the skills, the leadership and capacity to meet today's needs while preparing for tomorrow's opportunities and challenges. So join us on this journey as we talk a little bit about our workforce here at Ramsey County. And with that in mind, I'm going to turn this over to Kristen, who's going to talk about our TARP update.
So before we jump into the workforce statistics, just a little bit about TARP. Talent attraction, retention, and promotion has been a county strategic priority since 2016. A TARP-focused workshop will take place on July 28th, where you will meet our new HR Deputy Director, Abby Gadea. Human Resources is proud of the major TARP accomplishments to date, achieved in partnership with leadership from across the county. including the 2023 Inclusive and Respectful Workplace Policy, which established a consistent standard for behavior across the organization. The 2024 benefit changes that expanded employee choice in acknowledgement that employee benefit priorities change throughout their life cycle. In 2025, hiring process improvements reduced time to hire from 160 days to under 80 days, and the implementation of automated exit interviews ensured employees voluntarily leaving the organization are asked the same questions, ensuring reliable, comparable insights. We will provide more information on exit interview data later in the presentation. Finally, the 2025 bargain market and cost of living adjustments as phase one of comp and class modernization value and fairly compensate staff and better position the county as a premier employer. Many TARP opportunities remain. For 2026 to 2027, HR has prioritized progress in the following TARP initiatives, which again, you will hear more about at the July 28th workshop. People leader development will ensure all staff who supervise are equipped to coach, set expectations, manage risk, and develop future leaders, strengthening long-term organizational stability and capability. People leader development will support successful implementation of a performance management strategy where people leaders develop staff with consistent, actionable feedback. Phase two of class and comp modernization includes a total rewards survey of the workforce. Total rewards include everything an employee receives from the organization in exchange for their work. It includes compensation, benefits, recognition and performance, and work experience like career growth opportunities, learning, culture, flexibility, leadership support, and overall employee experience. The Total Rewards Survey will kick off in the fall and will provide data-driven insights about the benefit changes to date, identify gaps, and align our total reward strategy with organizational goals to ensure we remain competitive in attracting and retaining the top talent we need. We are using an independent third-party provider to ensure anonymity and increase employee confidence in the process. You will hear more about the Total Rewards Survey soon. Phase two of class and comp modernization will also include finalization of a cycle for market and pay equity reviews in alignment with budget and bargaining cycles. Key policy revisions will include updating the personnel rules and Minnesota Statute 383A. Finally, HR will move forward with an engagement survey, vendor selection, and strategy development to support the collection of accurate insights into culture, leadership, and workplace experience and implementation of meaningful change. Now we're going to move into the data.
Thank you, Jason. And I just want to acknowledge the people, even though I was not here during the initial initiative and the implementation of the TARP initiative, because I think that shows a strong commitment in this organization of really seeking ways that we can attract, retain, and support employees. I can honestly say, as a person who's been in this human resources for a long time, I'm very impressed with the intentionality around that TARP, because that shows that this is not something that's a one and done, or it's not performative. And of course, there can always be areas of improvement, but I just want to say, as a person who's been here fairly new, I really appreciate all of the intentionality that you as commissioners and leaders have really shown to really work to attract and retain top talent. So with that in mind, I'm going to now talk a little bit about our annual workforce statistics report. As many of you know, all state and local governments with 100 or more employees have previously been required to submit demographic workforce data, including data by federal categories of race and ethnicity, gender, and job category to the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. What you may or may not know is that the report that has been commonly known as the EEO4 report has been put on pause and remains on hold, but that does not stop the county from still tracking that information. And so when we hired Colleen in 2024, they will be responsible for submitting the report once the changes are made. We are still though tracking that information. The report informs progress in attracting, retaining, and promoting a diverse and talented workforce to support the community. If you'd like to get more information on that, we do have a QR code so that you can dig even deeper into that data. We love this information because it's more than just about the work or the statistics. It really does help us moving forward as we talk about our plans for the future in planning. You know, I really believe very strongly that the numbers only make meaning if they only are meaningful if you do something with the information. Mm-hmm. So it's more than just about trying to point fingers and who's doing something right or who's doing something wrong. It's really a great opportunity for us to improve what we're doing and to create workforce planning paths that can strengthen the work that we're already doing. So I would encourage you to use the QR code if you would like to get additional information on our workforce. Now, what this information does not include, it doesn't include pay equity, as pay equity data is not included, so that is not included in the information that is online. The pay equity report that is due to the county will be submitted to the state in January of 2027.
Excuse me, Mr. Patience, would you just explain what pay equity is? I was found it very helpful when you shared what that was. Yeah.
Kristen, would you like to?
So in reference to last year, as a result of this workshop, I think one of you asked us to send you the most recent pay equity report that we submit to the state. So what that report is, and I'm not sure if this is the detail you want me to go into,
is what it
is really looking at gender ratios in classifications and whether there are any disparities in how genders are being paid. So that report is required to be issued every 3 years. We last submitted it to the state in 2024, and we will submit it again in 2027 in January.
Do they only ask for gender? They don't ask for race or education level or any of that?
No, the analysis is based on gender disparities.
Do we keep track of those other demographics as well? So we know if we have two people at equal education level of experience and they're being paid equally?
So the state report is primarily interested in disparities by gender, but the county, as part of its class and comp division, does evaluate pay equity within classifications that evaluates experience only as a factor in how staff are paid. So basically, when HR does a pay equity review of a classification, we look at every single individual in that classification and their years of experience in that classification. And we look at whether there are any disparities in how employees are being paid based on years of experience.
Okay.
Thank you. So this is an overview of Ramsey County by the numbers. And this is as of December 31st, 2025. Right now, we have, at least at this point, we had 3,977 full and part-time employees. And 62% of our employee base is female. And the average age of employees is 44.9, compared to 45.3 as of December 31st, 2024. Regarding gender, 55% of our directors are female, and 53% of the total formal leaders are female. Formal leaders include 600 directors, managers, and supervisors. So this just gives an overview of, you know, where we were at that point. And as you can see, I do want to share and because I think it's important that our age group continues to go down. And that is something that is a key data point as we're moving forward. We've mentioned that before, but I think that we're mirroring that and we're seeing that demographic change and that demographic shift. So does anyone have any questions at this time on this? Anything that you'd like to? Yes.
Yeah,
please.
just a quick clarity around the numbers. Are these like full-time staff, or does it include part-time contractors?
It does not include it doesn't include contractors.
Okay.
So it's full and part-time employees.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
yes, Commissioner Gibson.
Oh, bless you. And then I guess one of the questions that I would have is for folks who may not be aware of the breadth and of the portfolio of work that the county does. I mean, when I look at the 62% being female, somebody might think that that is a gender disproportionate, so you think it'd be
Mm.
50-50. But given the broad sense of years of gendered employment around, like the health and human services, and knowing that that's a lot of what we
Mhm.
do. I guess let me put that out there. Is there a reason why beyond any particular hiring practices that would account for us having 62% of our folks being female rather than more of an even split?
Commissioner Jevonsing, we'd have to do a little bit more digging in the data. We do have, if you looked at our 25 departments that we have, we would really have to dig a little bit deeper in the data to find out. Now, having said all that, there are probably positions within our enterprise that lend themselves more to women being in those roles. I don't know them off the top of my head. I can give you anecdotal information. I think that is, but what would also be interesting to me to see if there's movement in
Mhm.
areas where there are traditionally not held by women, and are we seeing some movement in that area? And that's the part, quite frankly, that gets me excited to go into the next steps, because that is about digging into the data and seeing what do we see. That has implications regarding workforce planning, that had implication regarding, one of the areas that I'm very passionate about, which is pathway programs. Those are the kinds of things we can look at, and I'm glad you brought that up to see where there may be some anomalies and where we can come up with other strategies to really look at maybe closing those gaps or providing opportunities for people where they have not necessarily had those opportunities. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and I see it as, I'm building off of that as a way to make sure we have ample opportunity for all folks into all jobs, and some of that is bigger than us.
Yes.
I was at a career pathways for CNA program at one of our local high schools, and while it was nice to see some young men going into that profession, it was
Yeah.
predominantly female who would and that has to do with broader systemic gender
Yes.
and things like that. I don't want to, but the idea of being able to make sure that we have, an equal opportunity for women to go into our public works department, as we have equal opportunity for men and non-binary folks to find themselves in traditional health and human services roles. I mean, the goal is that anybody who wants to and has the credentials to do these kinds of work, or has the experience that would lend them to this, that we are tapping into that and making sure those opportunities are there.
And I'd like to build on what you just said. The other part, from an opportunity perspective, is to highlight, elevate, and amplify those kinds of things that may be happening within our county that maybe a department knows about, but we don't know about it. I mean, because there may be people in this audience right now that will say, oh, wait a minute, we're doing this. And we just haven't amplified those voices, whether there are pathway programs within Ramsey County, specifically in departments, we just may not know about them. And so it also gives us the opportunity to really shape that narrative around successful programs that are going on in our county right now within our workforce that we may not even know anything about, and that the community may not even know about them because they didn't even see those as options. So I think that to be able to tell those rich stories related to what's going on, and also to highlight areas where people may or may not have thought that they could either succeed or have a successful career in those kinds of opportunities, is something that I think we could all embrace and really get around. So thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we can go to the next slide. So this is a very interesting slide because it does show that our number of employees has been consistent for nearly a decade. There was a slight increase in 2020 and 21 due to the COVID-related programs and ARPA funding that we received. And so, as I mentioned before, at the end, there were 3,977 full and part-time employees, but it does show fairly consistent numbers over a period of time from 2016 to 2025.
Commissioner Jefferson?
Yeah, and this is not necessarily a question directly from me, but representing the last year when we were going through our budget cycle, it was not unusual for me to hear from constituents who were concerned about property taxes saying, how come you guys can't reduce your workforce if that's such a big part of your budget? And I'm saying this as a broad sense, that I like being able to see that for the last 10 years, we've stayed fairly consistent, that as our population has grown, as the complexity of the work has grown, that this actually has held pretty tight. So I really appreciate this timeline in light of that. But also when I think about shifts in demographics, when we talk about some of the technologies that's coming in, other kind of efficiencies, like are there spaces and places where you see and maybe this is part of the further conversation, departments where you see a natural need for growth and other places that maybe it's the natural like ebb and flow as technology and needs and things evolve. I mean, my guess is if we were to look at this over time, while this is consistent across the enterprise, there have been different programs that have ebbed and flowed, right, as we evolve to meet the needs of the county. So I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, that was a lot of words just to say, like, it's interesting for me to see this consistency, but also like, what is there, when we're thinking about how do we be responsive to the community's needs and all the different services that we deliver, but also wanting to be as efficient and productive in the way that we address that. Is there anything that we're not seeing in this that you can probably?
What I will say in that, I want to go back, I want to go to the last slide, but we can't.
Well, I can wait. And hold it in my head.
So, and I will say this, that's why I get excited about operationalizing this work. Because I think that, as we're working to meet with the departments and get this information, that's when we're going to find out, quite frankly, where the movement is, whether it is because of changes in the environment, changes in the needs of the community, which is causing us to look at things different, whether that is, quite frankly, how is Workday going to help us? And I'm not saying necessarily that's going to decrease staff, because I don't have a crystal ball, I don't know. But it gives us the opportunity to have those dialogues with the departments to find out a little bit more about what their changing needs are and what are the workforce planning strategies that we need to put in place. And that gives you the information, all of you as commissioners, so that you can share what we're doing to become even more of a world-class organization. And it's not anecdotal, right? We've got good information from our partners here, our departmental partners that can really help shape those conversations moving forward.
Town manager back.
Yeah, I have two things to your question, Commissioner Jevon saying. The first one is, I do want to call out that, while this has stayed consistent, we also do a lot of this work in partnership with the community. And so another part of the picture of how we deliver services is, with many community-based organizations that partner with us. And so this is just one part of the picture of how we deliver those services. So that would be another layer of sort of how we.
Our contracted
services, right? And then in terms of the future of work that you're out talking about and the efficiencies around people and technology, it is on my list for the operational excellence strategic priority. If you go out there, there's just a couple sentences, but as soon as we get through some of these organizational alignment cleanup things that we had to do, next on the docket is sort of a focus on the future of work and trying to understand sort of where technology and leveraging, the balance of humans and technology could be more efficient. And so that is part of the operational excellence portfolio. We just need to get through some of the cleanup from, our organizational alignment first, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So as I alluded to earlier, that we are embarking on generational shifts in our workplace, this data just further reinforces what I said earlier. For the last 10 years, the combination of Generation X and Y consistently represented over 60% of the workforce, steadily growing to about 82% in 2024. As I mentioned earlier, but the data supports it, the percentage of employees in the baby boomer generation decreased to 13.4% at the end of 24. And the most racially and ethnically diverse employees are found in generations Y and Z, which include 51% racially and ethnically diverse employees each. So that is why, if we want to talk about business case and operationalizing this information, this is our business case. Making equity and inclusion count by really working in partnership with our departments to operationalize the data such as this, to really help us really take a look at what those generational shifts have from a leadership perspective, from a learning perspective, and also from a retention perspective. Because what this shows us is what may necessarily have worked 10 years ago, for example, because we're seeing these numbers go this way. We have to be willing in the government sector to look at things differently. And then what are the levers that each one of us need to look at as we begin to really look at the generations here? And it's exciting. I mean, I was shocked, but it's exciting to see that, number one, we're tracking this data, but the other part of that for us is, what does this mean for us as a Ramsey County when we have such a highly competitive and highly unionized environment?
Quick question here, and I appreciate this slide and this breakdown. I think it's really helpful. One thing I noticed is that with the pace of the baby boomers decreasing is roughly 2 to 3% from 2022 up to 2025. Do you expect that pace of 2 to 3% continuing, or should we be preparing for a larger exodus coming sooner rather than later?
Well, and Commissioner, or if you're mentioning maybe around retirement eligibility, I think, I could say more than likely, but I don't think it's going to be like huge. But that's why we have to look at data. I'm real cautious about not saying things definitive, because it may also depend upon the occupation, where I believe is it social workers, for example, I believe.
Yeah,
Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
sure. So I have some information I can share. We do have approximately right now in the workforce, 144 employees who are 65 and older. We have about 800 employees who are 55 to 64. Last year, there was a request for information about which job titles did we have the most employees over the age of 55. And so the top 5 titles where we have employees over the age of 55 is social worker senior with 66 employees, administrative assistants at 48, probation officer senior, 38, residential counselors, which all work at Lake Owasso, 36, and eligibility specialist senior, 34. So succession planning in those departments impacted the most by those titles is very important.
Gotcha. And I know that from last year's workshop, you all mentioned a priority of Gen Z in recruitment. And it seems like there has been an increase in Gen Z in entering the workforce here. What's the retention been for Gen Z? If you have that information.
Don't think unless Colleen has it.
We can follow.
We can follow through.
Yeah.
That'll be a to-do for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Jean?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chair, I have a question around, maybe we'll get this later on, but just around the total rewards. And if you're seeing different trends with different generations about that, and also, and probably later about like just, a career path of folks who are working here. To see if there is a path for them to grow within the organization, and are we keeping track of that? Or are we finding that, you know, with different groups that, you know, they're here for just a few years and then leaving?
Yeah, I mean, I'll mention at this point that the work that we did in 2024 to really transform how we offer our health insurance benefits was primarily based on feedback from younger employees who aren't as interested in the kind of single health plan that we provided prior for more than 40 years with only 2 enrollment tiers. So really transforming the health insurance options that we now provide with choice. You know, staff can choose a high deductible plan. Many younger employees are actually really interested in that, where they have a high deductible plan with a contribution to an HSA. So we have, you know, we responded to that feedback. Employees who don't have children yet don't want to pay for a family plan. They want to be able to just pay for a single rate. So we do believe that that has impacted our ability to attract younger employees.
And talk about the total reward survey.
Do you want,
And that'll be, I just wanted to repeat, hopefully, we'll get additional data from the total reward survey. And one of the reasons why we wanted to do that was to really hear from our employees, given the changes that were made in the benefits offerings. Now let's go back and ask what people thought, you know, and so that's why we're intentionally going to be asking our employees how what we've done so far has really benefited them. And are there areas that we need to improve in, and we can extrapolate by demographics related to what our employee base is saying. So thank you for that. So the next slide, please. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about diversity. And this is another slide, and then some of the key takeaways in this one is that Ramsey County, that is, has diversified over time to reflect the broader Ramsey County community. And again, as we've said before, the most racial and ethnic diverse employers are found in Generation Y and Z. And our, if we look at our racially and ethnically diverse hiring, it has remained above 55% since 2019. Peaking above 60% in 2020 and 2021. Of the 558 new hires in 2025, 54.3 were racially ethnically diverse, which is about down 1% from last year. It's also interesting to me, and I found this interesting, is just when you look at the 21,000 applications that we received, which is huge. Okay. It continues to be diverse, and we actually look at that within all the different counties, not only here in Ramsey County. We track that, and all the counties do. We track that information and we share it amongst all counties. And we consistently, from an applications perspective, have the highest percentage of applications of diverse of all the counties within the state. But I just think, I was just amazed at the 21,000 applications that we receive every year. So, so at any rate, I just think that is just these are some really key data points that we continue to look at, continue to monitor, and continue to track. Now, this is what's also interesting in terms of diversity, in looking at our workforce diversity has increased for the first time in 4 years and is now at 41.99%, and it's been above 30% for the past 8 years. And as you can see, it's the trend is going in the right direction. But I think it's a key data point that I think we should continue to look at and continue to monitor. The other thing, we work really hard to make sure that this information is accurate. And one of the things that we do during open enrollment is that we also ask employees again to update their information for us so that we can even get more depth. Because this is voluntary. People do not have to volunteer this, but we do have a process during open enrollment to ask employees this information as well. And you have been working on a process, Colleen, to really develop, they are working on a process to further disaggregate this information by race and ethnicity.
One question.
Yeah, that was my question is, along with making sure that we are, the idea of representing our community and our workforce isn't a binary conversation.
Right.
It has richness to it,
Yes.
right? So I raised my hand right before you said that.
Is there anything you want to share?
The main thing with, when it comes to desegregation is just, there's only a certain level we can desegregate to in order to protect identities and personal data, all of that. So there, of course, will be a limit on how far we can desegregate, but it is something that we are keeping in mind and looking at further.
So this slide, we want to talk a little bit about this. As we've said before, our people leaders include about 600 directors, managers, and supervisors. Over the past 6 years, the racial and ethnic diversity of former leaders has increased from 24% overall at year-end 2018 to 29% overall at year-end 2023. However, in 2024, the year-end diversity decreased to 26% for former leaders. However, it did increase to 27% in 2025. We will continue to monitor this. We are seeing a noticeable decline in diversity. But part of what we want to do is, again, dig a little deeper to monitor, not only to monitor this, but really to figure out what is going on in these spaces. What are there areas that we need to be improving in, whether it is, because I don't want to say what it is now because we don't know. But as we work with our departments, we've got some initiatives around development. And then working operationally with each department, we want to be able to look at that and track that and monitor that and see what are some areas that we potentially might need to improve in. Commissioner?
Just looking at the data, could it be some of these managers and supervisors are moving into director roles? So that's why we're gonna see that decrease as well until we can either hire or promote from within.
I would say that's a very safe guess. Until we look at it more closely, I would say that's pretty good.
Any other questions? I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, just the idea of when we were looking at some of the demographic data as far as age as well, and then the idea that as the employees get younger, so does the diversity of their cultural and ethnic background. I guess one of the things that I think about is as we manage both generational differences around workforce and management and technology and how best to be a team, and then we think about making sure that I guess I'm wondering, is some of this have to do with seniority and like demographically? I mean, obviously, if you're coming in at 21, the chances of you having the skill set to be a director is different than if you're at 55
Yes.
or at
Yeah.
60, so we're looking at folks who are at different pots in their environment or in their employment journeys, right? And so I guess thinking about the alignment of our leadership and their skill sets and lived experiences and ability, and if there's any making sure that we're providing them the skill sets and the tools and teams the tools to deal with if there is now a greater gap between leadership and front and middle line staff. Just I don't know if I'm saying that the best way.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a lot there.
There's a lot, absolutely. The other thing too is recognizing that leadership has to change in some cases in terms of how we view leadership. It's no longer the whole top down, and in some cases that may be depending upon the job. If it's a regulatory job, But the other part of it is just making sure that we're equipping our leaders to lead in an inclusive way and then providing those opportunities. I mean, that's where a lot of the opportunities are because of our changing workforce. And I mean, back in the day, people would be here for 20 or 30 years, right? And that's not necessarily the case anymore. And I think that's something that we as the public sector need to understand that a little bit more. I mean, typically the turnover rate in the government sector is lower than in the private sector. And we need to understand also that the employees, what they may value, even from a leadership perspective, some people like, I'm out, I don't want to be a leader. And then there are some people that say I do. So understanding that the changes in worker expectations and leader expectations and how people want to be led have changed. And so that's why I get excited at this kind of information, because it can help inform us on what we potentially need to do in the future. Does someone have a?
Commissioner Ortega and then Commissioner Miller.
Patience, you kind of answered part of my question. When you mentioned that we went down a little bit, that doesn't concern me right now because there's an ebb and flow to everything.
Yes.
So one year we might be here and next year we're up there but the other thing, we're in competition with everybody else in a shrinking
Yes.
pool. And especially with people of color, because
Yes.
now they're spread all over the place. I'm just thinking, I have a relative who's changed jobs in 3 years because he's been recruited. And each time he gets better pay with a better work environment, and that's in 1 year.
In 1 year.
So I'm just thinking, we're probably being affected with the same dynamics.
It's so true. Yeah.
So for the board, 1 or 2%, I think thing is to stay on course, right? And keep looking for innovative ways rather than worrying about that we did 3%.
What I'm hearing from you, Chair Ortega, also is that what we don't want to be is performative, right? That is what we don't want. We want to manage expectations. We can also improve. We're not saying that. And we also need to recognize, particularly with diverse communities, is highly competitive. It really is. So thank you for bringing that up. Someone else?
No.
I think I just had a comment on looking at these and looking at even the data that we'll have for 2026 and what shifts we've had internally with either departments or programs closing or merging or what that ratio looks like too, like at what year was the care center closed and that staff, repositioned or separated from us, and even looking at the data that we'll have from the detox center and that as well. I just wanna.
Those are good data points.
Yeah.
We did. Yeah, that's very good, because that's part of the story too.
Right, it is.
You're absolutely right. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. So now what we're going to go to is our promotions, turnover, and separations. This is.
I'm gonna cover the slides in this section. There were 189 promotions in 2025. 72 or 38% were racially and ethnically diverse, compared to 291 promotions in 2024, with 46% racially and ethnically diverse. In 2024, we were still filling COVID vacancies. And so now we are, like, you might be wondering, why do we have so many fewer promotions in 2025 versus 2024? And now we're back to a more standard vacancy rate of about 3 to 5%. There were 430 total separations in 2025. That's voluntary and involuntary separations, with a turnover rate of 11.1%. That compares to 514 separations in 2024, with a turnover rate of 14.5%. We only send exit interviews to voluntary separations, and we're going to provide a lot more detail about turnover rate and exit interviews on the next 2 slides.
For the 11.1%, how does that compare to our other counties in the metro area?
Coming up. On the next slide. Anything else on this one?
Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, if I recall from, previous presentations, it's just that for the separations, some of them included folks not passing probation too. And we also saw, higher, separations, from diverse, from our diverse workforce. What do you, I guess my question is, what do you do with that data? And do you work with departments directly, or are you able to like dive deeper into that? Or what are some things that you do as the department?
HR is tracking the probation separations particularly. And starting to work with departments on making sure those are actually evaluated before the separation is processed, to make sure all of those risks are assessed, and also really digging into, whether or not departments need to do better training their staff, supporting their new staff. It is an area of priority focus. I think you're gonna mention it, at the end of the presentation. Yeah.
Okay.
So for staff who are failing probation, looking at the age and gender and diversity, and also why they're failing probation. How well have expectations actually been communicated to them? How well have they actually been trained? Definitely the organization as a whole, and that's going to be part of our performance management strategy as well. Okay, so turnover. According to the State of Minnesota Workforce Planning Report, which is issued by MMB, the public sector average voluntary turnover is 10%. For Ramsey County, the 10-year average turnover prior to the pandemic was just over 10%. So we were really close to that public sector average before the pandemic. 2021 and 2022 stand out for having the highest turnover rates in the previous 10 years. That's COVID related. The 2025 turnover rate of 11.08% is significantly lower than 2024's 14.5% turnover rate. In comparison to other surrounding counties, Dakota County's turnover rate is 9.7%. Washington County is 10.5, and Hennepin is 10.54.
For the, sure I have one of those. So I remember in the previous meeting, we're talking about the top departments that had the highest turnover rates, and the three that you all mentioned were ECC, FAS, and public health. Is that still the same that we're seeing across the enterprise, or are there other departments that you're seeing an increase in the number of folks that are turning over?
Perfect leading. Okay, so here we go. In 2025, departments with at least 15 employees, the turnover rate and the highest turnover rate. So I'm going to give you the top four. Emergency communications. So 2025, 31.28%. 2024, it was 32. 2023, it was 34. These are difficult positions to fill and retain. It's a high stress position. So the number one has stayed the same. Number two has changed. Number two for 2025 is the medical examiner at 30.3% compared to 18.75% in 2024. This is a small department of 17 total staff at the end of 2025. So when a few staff leave, that obviously impacts the turnover rate. And it's significant. These are also high stress positions. DCM Reyes is currently working with the county manager and HR to identify resources to support the medical examiner's department.
I can say a little more, Mr. Chairman. It's more than just we are going to support. Like, there's been a significant amount of work that's been done over the last I don't know, 6 to 9 months. So I can continue to give you updates as we go forward, but it's not we're just starting to work on it, and it's already been in motion. So, yeah, thank you.
Number 3 for 2025 is libraries. That's also a change, 19.61 in 2025 compared to 9.85% in 2024. The libraries experienced significant retirements and retirements in leadership in 2025. Number 4 is FAS, but FAS turnover improved from 21% in 2024 to 17.14% in 2025. This is a historically difficult to retain position with significant investment in new hire staff support recently.
Was going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I was gonna say one more thing too. Like, I do appreciate what, CHRO, for instance, talking about with, workforce planning and using the data. Like, to me, like, those top 5 departments that had high turnover, we should be then queuing up for, how do we get more supervisory? So like at a time when we can't always do everything equally across 4,000, hopefully those will be kind of the triggers for like, well, what would be the portfolios of HR things that should go into a department that has seen plus 15% turnover. You know what I mean? 'Cause that's a different set of needs.
Then
Even if they still have really strong people, maybe it's just timing. They're still going through something, and I
Sure.
think that having that be easy, that the departments don't have to ask, but that it's data driven, and it's then, you know, the DCM's job to work with the directors to just make sure that it happens in partnership with HR would be a good use of the, like a data point like that, you know? So maybe that's what you mean by some of that workforce planning, and
Yes.
same with the succession planning, like I was thinking, knowing that department level detail is really important. And so I do think if at some point we should have a conversation, not necessarily with the board, but with our exec team of like these key factors to make sure like the DCMs are kind of helping to manage which departments are falling into certain, I don't know, kind of like red, yellow, green around certain
Yes.
measures, and then what does that mean
Yes.
for how they would support and then how HR would support. So maybe that's your
Yes.
thinking too? Okay.
Commissioner Jefferson?
And this is me being vulnerable or just being open to some of my nuance around some of our workforce and contracts and labor and all of these different kind of pieces is. There's a part of me too that wonders, like, when we do have some of these natural attrition, where it's not like a budget decision that has opened up vacancies, but people, you know, so that when there are positions that are open. You know, sometimes there's a story behind that, as simple as there've been significant retirements at the library. It wasn't like a big shift in our decisions. But also the idea that there may be shifts in that sector. There may be other advances and more nimbleness in the broader market for people who have those kind of job sets that are taking advantage and jumping out of public sector work. Or is there a time also for us to take those to have that data point to say, what is just demographics?
Yeah,
Meaning like,
yeah.
but also, is there something else that's going on that would indicate that we too should be shifting our mindset around that particular kind of work? Because this will only get worse if, and I think of the green screens, I think of some of the other kinds of things. Some of those are within our control and some of them aren't, but are there ways that we're approaching the work and how within particular sectors that we should be looking at this information too and saying, okay, well, this is the canary in the coal mine, either just because demographically these folks have aged to a point of retirement, or there's something else going on in the sector that we should be mindful of.
That's really good. Thank you.
I have 2 notable mentions, I call them, in department turnover. Public health turnover in 2024 was 19%, and it has dropped to 13.58% in 2025. Historically, public health turnover has been high in the nursing titles where there's a lot of competition, but it was also high during and post-COVID. Turnover seems to have stabilized post-COVID for public health, and the department is also under new leadership. The other notable mention is HR's turnover rate has improved from 32% in 2023 to 18% in 2024 and is now at 14.71% in 2025. So we're trending in the right direction as well.
Yay.
Yes.
Commissioner Joe?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, yeah, HR, like, I think these are successes that we should be celebrating all within, you know, some of these, even the departments that are showing up, right? Like, I just want to be, you know, we should be celebrating these small wins, like, it goes a long ways. In addition to our FTE counts, also is that, our staff are reflective of the services that residents get. So I just also really want to commend the work that everyone has been doing from leadership in different departments to get us to this point, that these are small
Wins.
small wins that we should be celebrating.
Yes,
Yeah.
agreed. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Okay, we've got a slide on exit interview data now.
It's pretty sad.
So regarding exit interviews, electronic exit interviews or automated exit interviews were refined from 42 to 20 questions last year. We talked about that quite a bit and you all had input on the questions. We refined the questions to improve the response rate and collection of meaningful data. Just a reminder that responder identity is confidential but not anonymous. That means that only designated staff in HR have access to the data and only summary reports are shared with departments and others to protect individual identity unless for some reason we're legally obligated. So response rate on exit interviews is based on the percentage completed of those sent. And just a reminder that exit interviews are only sent to staff who voluntarily separate. In 2025, since we started administering the new version of the exit interviews, there were 226 voluntary separations. 89 of the exit interviews were completed. So 89 of 226 completed the exit interview for a response rate of 39.5%, which is better than the expected average for similar online surveys of 36%. You may remember that the response rate last year was actually slightly better, but that's because we had only sent out a few. So that's why the number you might wonder why it's a little bit lower this year.
Commissioner Joe?
I'm just wondering about, you know, this year, with Operation Metro Surge, if we have heard anecdotal, you know, just experiences from, staff choosing to leave because of those effects or, you know, disruptions. And how that may be captured in the personal reasons, you know, or other reasons, in trying to collect the data.
Yeah, we didn't track the data to that particular time period of Metro Surge. We could certainly come up with that time period and just get the number that left. Those you know, that respond to the question that personal reasons is their reason for leaving, they don't actually then tell us what that personal reason is. So I can't provide you a specific answer to that question today.
Okay.
I will just, you know, oh, I'm sorry.
We have one more question from Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for all this great information. I really appreciate it. So on these exit interviews, are these all done by remotely, or are they or not remotely, but just on paper or by survey, or are they done in person? Do you do any in person, and what would determine that? I mean, I know they take longer to do in person, but
Yeah, the majority, when we talk about the data that you're looking at is from staff who completed a survey. They clicked on a link and completed an electronic exit interview that's administered through our NeoGov system. We do in-person exit interviews in a variety of circumstances. I conducted a couple when I was the interim CHRO. Sometimes compliance and ethics conducts those. So we do make those available upon request, or sometimes HR is actually reaching out to individuals that we know are leaving. Sometimes there isn't a lot of time, you know, if you don't get a long notice from somebody to be able to pull that off. But the data that you're looking at is only from staff who've chosen to click on a link and complete an electronic exit interview, a questionnaire that's administered through our NeoGov system.
I would just say that I think as much as possible, it would be great to do these in person. You know, I mean, just to get 15 minutes with someone, I think, I know it's not a lot of time and I know it does take time, but I think it would be really rich to, you know, have as many of these. I don't know if there are plans to you know, improve that information, but I think it's a really great indicator of how we can be a continuous improvement, you know, in all of our work. So I don't know if there's any goals to do this in person, more in person than just whether they choose to click on a link or not.
Well, I mean, I'll just offer that that's how we used to do it, and it also wasn't consistent. So it kind of depends on who's actually doing
Yeah.
the in-person exit interview, and then they're normally taking notes, and so, you know, the information that's conveyed isn't always captured in a meaningful way, is why we went to more of a standardized process. Sometimes employees don't want to do an in-person exit interview either. They're really much more comfortable doing an electronic exit interview.
Thank you. That's helpful. It's helpful information. Yeah, I guess I can understand that too. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I have Commissioner Ortega and then Commissioner Miller.
I wanna ask about the work environment, even though it's a low number, was there any added information to those that left?
Colleen, do you remember any specific call outs?
Not specific. Usually if someone selects that, they have a lot that they add in the like, any additional things you want to add. They'll go very in depth there. If there's anything that is like a compliance or ethics concern, I then send that on to the chief compliance officer in her office to investigate further.
Commissioner Miller?
Yep, is there a time frame that we give employees who are departing with us to do this? So if you send the survey, you have a week to complete it, you have a month, like what's that time frame that we allow for this feedback to return?
Do you want to outline the
Speak to that as well.
process?
So yeah, so when someone like says, you know, I'm leaving, it gives their notice, then the manager passes that on to a PBTA. The PBTA is the one who sends it through NeoGov. The link goes to their Ramsey County employee, however, it can be forwarded to their personal email and then they can complete it whenever they like. It technically never expires within the link.
Oh, good to
It's just a
know.
matter of them having access to it.
Okay.
Their email.
And then my next question goes to, once this information is shared with the department or with the team, what happens next? So like, this is great that we see this data, but you know, similar to what Commissioner Ortega said, what are we doing to get that 7% of, or that 7.9% of unpleasant work environment or company culture down? Or how do we work on that? Is that just up to the individual departments to kind of address those?
That information is forwarded to the departments.
Well, so the business partners meet regularly with departments, and they're the ones that share summary exit data with departments. So Colleen mentioned that employees who respond do have the opportunity to fill out like a text box. Sometimes, you know, those responses will completely identify who the person is. So, you know, we would never share like exactly what the employee's feedback was if it would identify them, but we would share general themes. Usually when somebody responds with that kind of response, it's not a surprise necessarily to HR because we're hopefully already aware of potentially some issues going on in the department.
And then we have a plan to, or we work towards making that not be a consistent theme then, or we work on that theme? I just want to make sure that that we're using these exit surveys to correct action or to, you know, better our staff and help our employees. So whether it's maybe it's a manager issue, well, maybe that manager needs some training or some support. So how do we make sure that we're providing that support in these areas?
What I want to say about that is that number one, it's one data point.
Yep.
And one of the things that we'll talk about on the next step slide is that what my desire is, and what we're going to do is have what we call either a dashboard or whichever, you know, a dashboard where we can show all the data related to that department. So for example, you know, exit interviews or retention rates or those kinds of things that paints a picture to that leader regarding their department. Because the challenge with exit interviews is no matter where you work, the return rate is always low. But it does paint a picture. It's a backward look in terms of that picture. But if you combine that with all the other kinds of data that we want to operationalize with that department, then that gives them an overview of what's going on in that department. And the challenge is sometimes it is so anonymous that you can't necessarily say it's Jane Smith or whomever, right? But it does give them information. And what I'm hoping is as and I mean as an HR, as HR gets more consistent in terms of providing this information to the department, it is our hope that then they take the responsibility and look at what this data is and what do they need to do moving forward. So we need a more structured way of providing not only the exit interview information, but other information related to their department that really informs what they need to do. And that's part of what our plan is moving forward.
I would just say, Commissioner Miller, I really appreciate what you're asking. I kind of have the same thing that I've talked to Deanna about, our Chief Compliance Officer, about investigations too. Like, as we find themes, you know, it just feels like all this stuff needs to be kind of,
Yes.
there are multiple data points of things happening, whether it comes from that investigation angle, whether it's coming from, you know, employee feedback that comes through, you know, other ways of, because some departments actually use other tools, like directors have chosen to do like pulse surveys of their own, like they're trying to manage their culture through different channels. But I do think this is where I want to once again kind of bring that, what I was saying earlier, I want to insert back the role of the DCM here, because it's really, we should get to a point where they are working closely with HR to almost with that business partner to get that overview of the compilation of all that and say, okay, we're gonna have a state of, you know, we just talked about libraries, like the libraries meeting. So then Carrie would sit down there and see multiple data points to be able to look at, are there some coordinating themes, and then be able to even look at the service team too, and be able to say, okay, like, is there some training across the board that we could be more strategic about that maybe isn't needed across the whole county, but maybe then patients is seeing countywide themes that we should be addressing at like the senior management level or through their people leaders training. So we need to be able to use multiple areas data. I mean, it's not just investigations in this, but I'm even asking for more our safety data. Like it's a lot, there's a lot of pieces that actually influence employees sort of work environment that directors need more information to be able to manage. But then DCMs need to work on that accountability. Like how are you, because as part of our performance reviews as directors, there's also a section about how you're kind of working to develop yourself and your teams. And that should be a direct translation of like, what are you working on? That's not just what you want to work on, but actually what we know needs to get worked on.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does.
So we're gonna have to strengthen that role a little bit. And we have a lot of DCMs in the room. So I think that's actually a really important thing they need to take leadership over.
And I'd like to just add, County Manager Becker spoke to that, because this is only one data point.
Right.
But for example, and I'm not saying this is happening right now, so I'm going on record. But what I've seen in previous lives is that the exit interview is one data point. Then we look over here and look at the investigations. And,
Yes.
you know, this individual may have 50, even if they're unsubstantiated, right? But the same individual, there's always a complaint. That's another data point, right? There may be other data points that begins to tell the story, whereas the exit interview data is on only one data point. But if you look at all the data points in addition to the retention pieces, that paints a picture and then provides a strategy that the DCM may need to take with that particular leader. Right? And so that's why getting all this information is so critical to try to help support the work of that department.
Thank you.
Quick time check, we have 15 minutes and we're forced in, but just wanted to make sure folks are aware.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We'll go to the workforce planning, please. We've talked more about this. We've already hit on most of these in terms of what the emerging issues are. I think the only thing that I want to add to this, which we have not discussed, but I do think it's a key piece of the puzzle, and that's around paid family medical leave and its impact, which is something we're constantly tracking now, because when you all did this report last year, this wasn't in the queue. And so when you look at, I'm very curious, and I think we're all going to be very curious in terms of how that's going to impact our work. Not all organizations, there are some federal organizations that aren't, that maybe that are local that aren't having this. And my question is, you know, how is that going to impact those organizations that are federal organizations, you know, the federal government that are choosing not to do this, even though they're local? Is that going to impact their ability? But these are some of the things that we're seeing that are emerging issues for us. I also want to continue to reinforce the technology piece related to AI. We're seeing that in HR already in terms of people using AI as part of how they are, whether it's choosing their resumes or interviews or those kinds of things. My team has talked to me specifically about things that they're noticing in that space that are impacting our abilities. And we're noticing that and seeing how that is, you know, could potentially adverse our abilities, and being more aware. Our team needs to be even more aware of that. And then also the legislative impacts that we are all aware of. These are the things we have to continue to reinforce and think about as we are doing our workforce planning in the future. And many of these things we've already discussed during our conversations now, but I'd like to open it up for questions.
Couple of questions, Commissioner Young and then Commissioner Ortega.
For the paid family medical leave, may you just expand a little bit more about how that may be a challenge for the county in terms of staffing? Because my understanding is that we already do have many of those benefits already that were paid as a county. So then how does this affect us still? Or why is this a factor?
Do you want me to speak to it? Okay. So some of the issues that we're monitoring are the impact in departments of having multiple staff on leave at the same time. So the benefit, the PFML benefit is a benefit provided by the state. It doesn't provide 100% pay, but it does provide employees up to 20 weeks of leave in two different buckets, basically. So while the county does provide generous sick and vacation leave, not, you know, those accrue over time. So not everybody has the kind of leave balances that they might need when they actually have something personal happen, like medically, or they need to take time off to support a family member. So the benefit that's now being offered, you know, that the state of Minnesota has required all employers to offer, is impacting every employer's ability to basically deliver the services, you know, that they exist to provide, because they have multiple employees on leave at the same time.
So just to add to that, this is in addition to our benefits, like the
Yes.
city benefits. Okay, so
Yeah.
folks can choose to use like their time off. And then you also tap into the states to add on.
Yeah, the way the county administers the program is employees choose whether they're going to take advantage of the state benefit or use their accrued leave.
Or they
So-
can do both too.
No, you can't stack, you
Oh,
can't
okay.
do both.
Mhm.
So employees have to, you know, they work with HR. We've provided a training. We have a lot of online resources where employees evaluate the pros and cons of using their own accrued leave versus the state benefit. So some of those, like if you use your accrued leave, you're staying basically on the county's payroll at 100% pay. All of your deductions are still, like for your benefits, are taken out of your paycheck. You still contribute to para, you're still gaining para service. If employees decide to go with the state program, They are getting a check directly from our third-party vendor. The county is no longer able to take the deductions for their benefits. They're no longer contributing to para or gaining para service. So, HR has really invested a lot of time into educating the workforce about the choices that they have in front of them. So HR, the data points that we're monitoring is how many employees decide to take the state benefit versus using their own accrued leave. We're also monitoring, whether employees come back to work. I mean, taking a significant leave, sometimes employees don't come back. So that's one thing we're wondering about. We don't have enough data yet. The research shows that states move in the direction of a PFML program because it builds loyalty to an employer and actually improves retention. We don't know if that will pan out for us. But that's some of the thinking behind these programs and other states that have, I think Minnesota was the 13th state to implement a program like this.
Well, I would say then, yeah, I would just anticipate that we would see more people use it just based off on the age, right, of our workforce. And also being a part of the sandwich generation, right? It's like caregiving for your own children and for elderly aging parents. Yeah, so I think I think that just forces us to think more strategically or creatively about FTEs, how we create positions when we forward in the workforce.
Yeah, and I'll just comment that it's not easy within our current structure to cover for vacancies temporarily. So that's part of what departments are navigating. Like if you have a lot of people like deputies or 911 dispatchers on leave, you don't just pull those, you can't call a temp agency. So, that's part of what we're navigating too. There's also union contracts we have to consider.
I have two more questions from Commissioner Ortega and then Commissioner Jefferson, and then we'll finish up. So any other questions, just hold until we get to the end with these last couple of slides. So, Commissioner Ortega?
I'll make it quick. I was just reading very recently, maybe in the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks in the New York Times. Private sector, the corporations are moving towards getting rid of medical paid leave. And part of the rationale behind that, you mentioned some of them, it is the disruption in the workforce. I'm just wondering, those are some of the trends you're talking about we need to follow.
Yeah.
But they are moving in that direction and with very little fear of not having a workforce. Because in some corporations, very difficult to have somebody gone for 20 weeks. And maybe you have multiple folks at the same time out for 20 weeks.
Yeah, no, I mean, in Minnesota, so private employers cannot get out of it now because the requirement is on private and public. But many private employers prior to the state passing the law had more generous, leave.
Well, just my comment on that. And I know we're worried about Ramsey County, Inc. So Minnesota is still one of 50 states, and if a business moves out of Minnesota because of medical leave, then somebody is unemployed, forget about your medical leave, you don't have a job.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking on the bigger picture and where all this is going. Just a comment.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Commissioner Jefferson?
A quick question. I'm just wondering should we have, now that we have this broader Paid Family Medical Leave Act, if we do have separations following that, I'm wondering, do we have any additional questions that are within those exit interviews specifically for folks? And one of the things I'm thinking of the dynamics of our federal actions and our state actions that are impacting caregivers and the idea of having to step in to provide informally caregiving structures that were being provided, but now won't be because of federal and state actions that we may, and I'm just curious, it would be nice to know with that exit interview, if somebody takes paid family medical leave act, because now they have to take care of an aging parent or a child with a disability or another kind of medical thing that if previously there had been a service or a program that had stepped in to provide that, it would be nice to be able to disaggregate or to discern that for us, that it wasn't somehow something we weren't doing on our end as an employer. And it was an external, like, it was a reaction to the fact that now I need to be there. Similar to the number of women who stepped back during COVID, because they realized if there isn't school, that means I'm parent and a full-time worker, and a lot of women pulled back from employment during that time because they now were forced back into ongoing and sustaining caregiving roles. And I'm worried that, I mean, while I'm worried that the presentation of paid family medical leave is happening right at the time when also all of these other external supports are crumbling around families. And so it would be nice to be able to know what's us and what's this external thing going on.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion that we'll consider, because we are moving into reviewing the exit interview questions. And whether we're gonna make any changes to that. So I appreciate that comment.
Oh, okay. So next slide, please. So this is, to me, the money shot. And this is about how do we work to operationalize what we've talked about today. What you've heard today is a lot of what we're doing from a global Ramsey County employer overall organization level. And what we are going to do from a next step perspective is really operationalize by providing additional support to the departments, to the DCMs, so that they can, in partnership with human resources, really look to how we can make equity and inclusion and diversity count for their departments. So what you see in front of you is what our next steps are going to be in looking at the creation of workforce dashboards that really help us to understand all of the information that the departments need for workforce planning. The other part of that is the leadership insight pieces, which we are deepening our work through the data and identifying current trends and tools to really support the work of workforce planning by the departments and supporting the county managers and the directors and people who are the people, what I would say, the people leaders. The other area is really deepening our work and commitment to employee experience. And some of the things that I'm most happy with for what we're doing with Abby joining our team is really deepening our new employee orientation and modeling, quite frankly, off of some of the work that Hennepin County has done, where they're due 30 and 60, 90-day check-in and support for new employees to really find out what are some of the things that we as an organization need to be doing differently. And then coupling that with what I'm calling new manager orientation and support that really supports the new managers but it is open to all managers in providing additional support for them. The first goal is around the risk mitigation piece, because every single people leader in this organization is a representative of Ramsey County. And so we are working in partnership with some of our colleagues in the organization to really deepen that work. But our first priority is around the risk mitigation piece and also providing additional tools and supports for new managers so that they have the support that they need to be successful. And then the last part of this, as far as the next steps are concerned, is really looking more around the operational planning, the workforce planning, some of the things that county manager Becker has talked about, in really helping and establishing that foundation that really supports workforce planning. I also just want to reemphasize that one of the areas that I'm most excited about is really providing consistent support to our people leaders. Consistent support to our people leaders, because we want them to not only be successful, we want to make sure that we are speaking with that one Ramsey County voice and what it means to be a people leader and what the expectations are. You know, one of the quotes that I use in my own life is, heavy is the head that wears the crown. it is an honor to be a people leader. And we have an expectation of you as a people leader, that these are the things that we expect of you as Ramsey County. And so to be able to do that work and really support leaders, I have found the people here, and I'm saying this and because I really believe it. Every single DCM or every department leader that I've talked with, people want this. I don't feel resistance. I feel people want this. It's going to take time, but I'm confident that as we work to operationalize many of the things that we talked about today, I look forward to next year when we come back and talk with you about the successes that we have achieved together. You've seen already some of our departments, the trends are going in the positive direction. That's with me not even being here. I'd love to take the credit, but I can't. I like recognition just like anyone else, but that shows a commitment from leaders here with just minimal support. That shows people really do want to do the right thing. So I'm excited about the future of partnering with you all, partnering with my colleagues, partnering with employees to really take what we're doing to the next level. And so I want to thank Colleen, because Colleen's position is only around 2 years, not even years. Their leadership in this area has been phenomenal, and I want to thank Kristen and her work. I want to thank our team, and we just look forward to continuing to support the great work of everyone here in Ramsey County. So we're open to any other questions that you might have.
Any other questions from folks? Well, just thank you all again for this information. I think to your earlier point at the start of the presentation, the data points do tell a story.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of opportunity in what we've seen today, but a lot of good that we need to be
Yes,
lifting up
absolutely.
and continue to go down that direction. So appreciate the work that you all have done and what's to come. And no other questions? We'll call it. Thanks, folks.
Thank you very much.